From Archives to Adventure, a sustainable story from Grantown and Spey, capturing an age of change in community archives heritage groups. A presentation from the Grantham Society. Grantown and Spey, the town of Grant, capital of Strathspey and former borough of Regality, has been described by none other than the historiographer royal as one of the finest and best preserved of all Scotland's 500 or so Georgian planned settlements. It's certainly the best documented. We know, for example, the exact date and the exact location of the first house to be built in New Grantown, as it was then described. And that cannot be said for any other planned town or village, not even Edinburgh's new town. Grantham Society is a small local organisation in the very heart of the Highlands, beneath the shadow of Cairngorm and close to the River Spey, Scotland's fastest flowing river. In April last year, the Society became a charity, but it was founded nearly 50 years earlier to help protect and promote a very special heritage, and for that purpose, to research and to gather up resources. The world changes and we change with it. But we are still seeking a permanent home, an archive or resource and information centre for the Society's members' scattered resources. By now, a huge collection of books and maps, articles and transcripts, photographs and newspapers. Grantown does have a small archive in the local museum, but there's an infinitely bigger collection of resources held by individuals in cupboards, boxes, in attics and in forgotten corners, as well as in the museum. It includes one man's lifetime's work with thousands of transcripts and relevant publications. The Society is trying to raise funds to house and start digitising these in order to make the material more widely and more readily accessible. Recently, we've been collating some of these and using them to help with 3 current projects, each of which has a significant link to environmental sustainability. One project involves the town's built heritage. Much of Grantown is a conservation area. The care, use and maintenance of historic buildings is an ongoing and universal problem. It's one of our big concerns. Legislation to improve energy efficiency adds even greater burdens. A second project links people to the natural heritage. Not only does this provide green health space, but the woods and open spaces, the moors and mosses, the fields and riverbanks support biodiversity and soak up harmful carbon dioxide emissions. Grantown was built for people, but its streets and many open spaces have been taken over by traffic. Grantown's wide high street is a busy main road and is also in high demand as parking space for shoppers. The third project, therefore, is about rebalancing the needs of motorists with those of pedestrians and cyclists, at the same time cutting down on those harmful exhaust emissions. Older buildings are often seen as barriers to sustainability, with problems of heating and insulation, and a carbon footprint which has traditionally been regarded as poor. We need to recognise that the approach for greatest sustainability is to ensure these buildings, their fittings and furnishings, continue to be carefully maintained using traditional methods and materials. Good maintenance is the essential first step towards improving energy efficiency. Learning from the past provides a guide for the future. A new approach to measuring annual carbon emissions and issuing energy performance certificates could involve taking into account their construction and the natural and local materials used and their embedded energy over the years. When this legacy carbon is included, it gives us a new figure for annual emission, easily outscoring modern constructions with a high content of cement, the CO2 villain of the building world. For retrofit of old buildings, the reuse of traditional materials and traditional skills evens out the comparison even more. For new construction, there are also new materials, notably geopolymer concrete, made from local waste and created using 3D printing techniques. They're on display at COP26 in Glasgow. The Society's Historic Buildings project focused mostly on the High Street and the Square. It's involved tracing the story of each building from the fewing of the ground right through to its current use, then combining them on a continuous interactive digital display. This way, any aspect of ownership or business can be viewed along with copies of documents and photographs, anecdotes, and current merchandise. The Digital Town Centre project aims to make readily available comprehensive information on each of the buildings, from current commercial offers to original ownership and construction. It exists to encourage visitors to stay longer and to heighten awareness of the valuable heritage that exists in Grantown, and through that awareness, assist appropriate preservation and improvement. Whilst a digital high street is still under construction and awaiting funding to create the ultimate app, a heritage trail has been created to illustrate some of this information, both as a tourist attraction and a reminder of our heritage. Today, we're rediscovering what the Victorian and Edwardian visitors to Grantown knew so well: the value of exercise and fresh air, the healing qualities of the unpolluted atmosphere, and the calm of the open and woodland spaces. Grantown, they declared, is the sanatorium of the British Isles. It was around 1900 that the Reverend William Thompson wrote, "People come to Grantown to take their daily walks there on account of the bracing air, pleasing scenery, pure atmosphere, green foliage, bright flowers, and singing birds. And a walk for these objects never palls and can be repeated week after week. It is all to the good if a little additional interest can be given to the walk." Not only is the climate claimed to be good for one's physical health, but also mental health. A visiting physician wrote, "No finer retreat for the jaded businessman can be found throughout the length and breadth of Britain. Here he can rest quietly and peacefully and rebuild his balance of nervous energy." The Grantham Society has taken these 100-year-old writings to heart and is creating a portfolio of heritage trails, walks through the woods by the river, highlighting features of interest along the way. They will exist in map form with notes and also a fuller printed magazine version. These will be available in hard copy and digitally. Each will be available as a virtual walk through presentation and as an app which will identify key points along the route with information available. The ultimate is to organise guided walks with musical interludes. Spey is, of course, the iconic home of the traditional music and dance of that name. The third of these projects is 3A's Grantown, aimed at creating a network of routes to key destinations, making short journeys within the town active, accessible, and attractive, safe for an unaccompanied 12-year-old. This project is supported by Sustrans. Not only is it planned to make journeys safer for those walking, wheeling, and cycling, but to make them the preferred option rather than going by car for short journeys. It's very much an inclusive project for all ages, all abilities, for residents and visitors, for leisure and for business. By developing our archive and using our heritage resources to make the routes attractive and informative, we aim to increase their usage and thus again play a small part in helping to create a more sustainable environment. As times change, we too change. As we develop our archive and use our resources more effectively, we create not only a more sustainable organization, but help to build a sustainable community and environment. We can use our past to protect our future. Thank you.